feelings, femininity, audacity, ferocity, wild but obedient. Serpentine steps accompanied by seductive, sinister Arabian flute music, with incense heightening the euphoric ambience. Dark black coal-lined eyes that stare directly into your soul. Arabian nights are unbelievably warm. In headscarves and hymens, Mona al-Tahawi writes, "The Arab world is a popular place to worship the virginity god. Whether you're a believer or not, a Muslim or a Christian, everyone worships the goddess of virginity. The god of virginity rests upon the most delicate foundation, the hymen, and every effort is made to preserve it. We sacrifice our girls' bodily integrity, right to pleasure, and right to justice in the face of sexual violation at the altar of the god of virginity. Arab women are not allowed to enjoy the pleasure of sex, in contrast to the freedom enjoyed by Arab men. Arab men are urged to obtain as much experience as possible, while Arab women are pressured into believing that premarital sex is a sin by relentlessly instilling the value of virginity in their thoughts."
She's still a girl. This term is used in several Arab countries to refer to a lady or girl who is single, sometimes known as a virgin, meaning that she has not yet engaged in sexual activity. Like many other things related to the human body, sex is forbidden in Arab societies, especially for women. Premarital sex is especially prohibited. Before marriage, having sex is prohibited by social and religious norms, as well as by law in several nations. It is penalized by the state, the family, and society at large. Society's penalties can be the worst, sometimes even involving the death of women as part of a complex system of censure. One aspect of this is that, despite what is claimed to the contrary, we all know that it is acceptable for males to have sex before marriage, but it is forbidden for women.
In Arab Muslim society, women face a great deal of shame, mistakes, guilt, and sin about their bodies, particularly about their hymen and female organs. Feelings of alienation from their youth toward their bodies result from these emotions. A body that belongs to them alone, to no one else. However, in their lives, patriarchal mindsets and societies dominate and intimidate this body. Because this institution is accountable for the honor of the entire society based on these values. The belief that one's honor depends on the behavior of others and that, as a result, the behavior needs to be controlled is the foundation of the concept of honor that is used to justify the mistreatment and murder of women. Many women have to pay a price for the word honor. They live in constant terror that never goes away and keeps them from seeing how natural their bodies are. A culture that has deemed her body to be something she cannot control.
Join us on a journey to the early chapters of the history of the Arab deserts to gain a deeper understanding of what goes on in the bizarre world of these legendary princesses, who in our imaginations, wrapped in exquisite silk dresses, rode on a flying carpet, and emerged from the center of the glitzy Disney animations. The social structure of the Arabian society was diverse and varied, resembling a jumble of social classes. The woman standing among the nobles was marked by a high level of regard. The woman had a good deal of free will, and her choice would usually be followed. She was so loved that it would not be difficult to spill blood to protect her honor. She really held the key to either a pleasant peace or a terrible conflict. Despite these benefits, Arabia had a strictly patriarchal household structure. The woman's legal guardian held ultimate authority over the marriage contract, and her statements regarding her marital status were unquestionable. However, prostitution and other forms of immorality were prevalent and actively operated in other socioeconomic classes.
It appears that a variety of marriage arrangements were typical at the time. In the first, when a dowry has been agreed upon, a man delivers his daughter in marriage to another man, much like in modern marriage ceremonies. In the second, a husband may send his wife to have sex with a well-known member of the upper class, like a poet or a courageous and powerful knight from a noble family, for her to conceive a powerful or noble son. She goes back to her spouse after he finds out she is pregnant. A third type involved less than 10 males engaging in sexual activity with a woman. No one could refrain if she became pregnant and gave birth to a kid. She would send for these men. They would gather at her home together. "You know what you have done," she would remark. Pointing to one of them, "I have given birth to a child, and it is your child." It was something the man meant to concede.
The fourth type had many men engaging in sexual activity with a particular woman, a whore. She wouldn't stop anyone. These women used to invite anyone who desired to come inside by flying a certain flag at the gates. If this whore became pregnant and gave birth, she would gather those men and a seeress would identify the child's parent. The infant would be claimed as his own by the designated father. Women have always fought alongside men in conflicts. The winners would freely engage in sexual relations with these women, but the offspring of such conception would live a life of shame. Arabs before Islam had an infinite number of wives. They may wed their father's wives if they were widowed or divorced, or they could wed two sisters simultaneously. The spouse had a tremendous deal of control over divorce. Adultery was considered impolite by practically every social class, except a small number of men and women whose dignity forbade them from engaging in such behavior. Compared to the female slaves who formed the greatest calamity, free women enjoyed far better conditions. The vast majority of Arabs living before the advent of Islam did not appear to feel guilty about engaging in such obscenity.
Through the sandstorms, a man on a camel appears. The footsteps of this camel cause trembling throughout the entire planet, not just in the Arab desert. All of these forms of sexual intercourse were outlawed by Prophet Muhammad when he introduced Islam to Arabia, except modern-day Islamic marriage. Examining the Quranic perspective on sex is necessary to address the sexual issue that Arabs faced at the outset of Islam. In Surah 53, verse 45, we read that it is He who created pairs, the male and the female, from an ejaculated drop of sperm. In Surah 19, verse 20, Maryam, the mother of Christ, says, "How shall I bear a son?" She answered, "When I am not touched by a human and not unchaste." Finally, it is stated in Surah 2, verse 223, "Women are your planting place, for children. Come then to your planting place as you please and forward good deeds for your souls and fear Allah. And know that you shall meet Him. Give glad tidings to the believers." These verses lead one to the conclusion that 1. Sex is only acceptable between a man and a woman. 2. After marriage, a woman's virginity is crucial. Having an affair is forbidden. 3. A man is free to engage in sexual activity whenever he pleases, without regard to the time, location, or particular circumstances. It seems that these are the principles of the philosophy of sex in Islam.
Early Islamic history viewed sexuality as a healthy aspect of life. People were able to understand the connection between spiritual and sexual life thanks to the Prophet Muhammad. Islam affirms heterosexual relationships within marriage and legal concubinage and acknowledges the sexual drives and rights of both men and women to sexual fulfillment. Any other sexual activity is forbidden. The construction of male and female as opposites men as logical and self-controllable, women as emotional and incapable of exercising self-control, especially over sexual urges, helped to rationalize social segregation. Male authority over women's bodies is necessary because unsatisfied or unrestrained female desire can lead to fitna, social anarchy, and societal order. The patriarchal system was positioned to benefit from the area of licit sexuality. To guarantee legal filiation, the patriarchal family functioned as the most important social structure and the appropriate place for intercourse. Social hierarchies were upheld by marriage partnerships between families of equal status, as women were expected to be supervised by male family members to maintain honor.
In terms of their sexual desires, the Umayyad period's citizens were no different from those who came before them. Following the Islamic society's settlement in a semi-urban environment, new developments began to occur. The royal family's ancestors began to inherit large properties from the ruling families, thereby passing on the caliphate's sovereignty. The age of invasions persisted, commerce flourished, new economic opportunities were unlocked, and sexuality and other artistic endeavors gained prominence. The Umayyad capital evolved into a luxurious realm during that time, resembling Mecca but offering greater room for the expression of lusts, instincts, and desires. The sexual lives of the Umayyad caliphs were quite active. "I had so much sexual intercourse with women till I could not tell if I was having it with a woman or a wall," is allegedly what Hisham bin Abd al-Malik remarked. Yazid bin Muawiyah likewise became so enamored by Hubaba that it caused havoc with state affairs. He preferred to stay with her to going to pray on Friday. Similarly, throughout his 9-year reign, Al-Walid ibn Abd al-Malik married 63 women.
In private households where the goal was to have sexual interactions and entertainment, there was a great breakout of sexual instinct and personal feelings during the Abbasid period. Some were purchasing young boys and girls slaves for sex acts in private residences. There were more and more brothels, and there were sex-related carnivals in the pubs. People were encouraged to enjoy having sex with women under the Abbasid caliphates. It is reported that the Caliph Harun al-Rashid fell in love with 3 stunning young women, named Sahar, Daya, and Karnath. He later married Marajil, the 4th of these women, who gave birth to his son, Al-Mamun. Additionally, he married Marida, who gave birth to Al-Mutassim, and Zubaydah, who gave birth to Al-Amin. However, after his relationship with Yahya ibn Akthamba, a judge in al-Basra, Al-Mamun acquired 200 female slaves and developed an inclination towards having intercourse with young men. Al-Amin was more likely to have sex with young boys and had no desire for women. He once established a religious order that allowed him to have sex with a young child if the kid was a slave acquired via conquest or inheritance. This also applies to Al-Mutassim, who had a preference for the Turkic youths.
Slaves and free women told stories during this time. Their bravery was on par with that of men. The Al-Aghani volumes of Al-Isfahan, Ibn al-Nadim's Al-Fast, and the 1001 Nights, which were written around 1500 AD, are a few books that present women's stories. The narratives in these books capture the sexual desires that Arabs experienced during the close of the Abbasid and early Fatimid eras. According to 1001 Nights, women were drawn to young males, gilmen, particularly black guys, and would go out on the streets to have sex with beggars. These tales depict lesbian relationships and females having sex with animals. For instance, we learn from Vardan Kasab's narrative that a woman visited his store to purchase meat. He started to have doubts about the woman, and upon pursuing her, he found that she was concealing a bear that he had both fed and slept with. He told her to turn from his sins and kill the bear. The story of Porters and Girls includes a full account of relationships, sexual activities, and the names of the female genitalia during the night. Furthermore, same-sex relationships are mentioned, the story of Kamar al-Zaman and his mistress.
Sexual connections in medieval Islamic civilizations were structured according to the concepts of social and political hierarchy, as evidenced by the male-authored literature on morals, manners, medicine, and dream interpretation. Sexuality was defined in terms of the penis's dominance or reception during a sexual act. Additionally, a person's place in the social hierarchy also placed them in a specific sexual role. Male and female slaves, wives, concubines, boys, and other subordinate social inferiors were the targets of sexual penetration, which occurred between dominating, free adult men. Instead of mutuality between couples, the adult male's ability to obtain pleasure through dominance was at risk. Male prostitutes were believed to submit to penetration for financial gain rather than pleasure. Women were thought to be inherently obedient, and boys, being not yet men, could be penetrated without losing their potential manliness. The idea that a grown man may find fulfillment in a subservient sexual role and allow penetration was dismissed as inexplicable and limited to pathology.
The public sphere was ruled by adult men who, in secret, subjugated their wives and slaves. Men were sinners when they had sex with boys or male prostitutes, but this did not diminish their manliness in the eyes of the public or jeopardize the significance of female virginity or family honor. Female homoeroticism received less attention since women were viewed as irrelevant to gender concepts because they could not penetrate and were restricted to the private sphere. Effeminate men renounced their claims to be part of the dominating male hierarchy when they willingly and publicly behaved as women. As poets, musicians, dancers, and singers, they lost their respectability as men, but could be tolerated and even valued as entertainers. Men who preserved a powerful public image while being subservient in private endangered stereotypes of men as dominant and were open to criticism. The way that sexual connections are articulated by societal hierarchies serves as an ideological framework that people have used to navigate different aspects of their lives under shifting historical circumstances. Publicly, adult male egalitarian homosexual relationships might not have been acceptable. Nonetheless, there is proof that males of comparable status were able to negotiate these relationships during the Middle Ages by switching between active and passive sexual roles.
In the modern era, there have been significant changes that have coincided with the perpetuation of doctrinal Islamic sexual norms. These changes include the emergence of contemporary state structures, Western colonial interference, and a range of reform and nationalist movements. The sexual order's underlying patriarchal principles have not been seriously challenged by these intricate processes, nor have they diminished the ability of states, elites, and political organizations to use both secular and Islamic discourses in their favor. Gender relations were mostly unaffected by middle-class reform and nationalist movements as well as by colonial authorities. Although many nations have embraced secular legal codes, they have typically yielded to religious authority when it comes to family or personal status legislation. Ideals of Islamic morality and cultural authenticity have been used by both nationalist and Islamist discourses to limit and direct change. Patriarchal family structures have been undermined by the advent of nuclear families, more economic and educational opportunities for women, and the emergence of romantic connections in place of earlier planned marriage practices. However, the mainstream media consistently reinforces the idea that normal sexual behavior and family values come before personal romantic desires. Furthermore, opposition organizations and regular citizens utilize the occurrence of sexually deviant behavior as a means of criticizing a wide range of government policies, as regimes associate their legitimacy with the preservation of morality and the licit sexual order.
Regardless of sexual orientation, relationships involving people are still perceived as power dynamics based on inflexible gender norms. Men who engage in active sexual intercourse with other men are not viewed as homosexual in Turkey, Egypt, or the Maghreb. In fact, dominating other men sexually may even elevate one's status to that of hypermasculinity. They hold women in low regard and substitute other guys for them. Equality in sexual relationships poses a danger to the hypermasculine hierarchy, regardless of sexual orientation. Gender roles are firmly ingrained in society. The enduring belief that women are incapable of exercising sexual control grants aggressive masculine sexuality a wide societal license. For even the suspicion that they engage in illegal sexual activity, women are the only ones who have to take responsibility and face the harsh penalties that honor crimes frequently demonstrate. Let's take an alternative approach. We have never heard an Arab woman suggest that males should wear headscarves to protect themselves from temptation. In contrast to Christianity, women in Islam are not inherently sinful or evil. Furthermore, Surah 2 verse 223 speaks of a man's incapacity to restrain his libido. However, Arab men's fear of losing control was so strong that, without realizing it, they appropriated the Christian idea of original sin and put the onus on women.
According to the Quran, they both erred and were banished from heaven. The fear of losing power over women, however, was so profound that they aired the words of black-eyed nymphs and eternal virgins non-stop through mosque loudspeakers and muffled Allah's voice whenever he spoke of equality and salvation. The Arabs shied away from sexual postures that suggested a woman's dominance over a man because of this extreme dread. They used medical beliefs to defend their preference for men, saying things like, "Never let her dominate you because her juice enters your penis and causes hernia and kidney stones." Reading traditional Arabic literature that focuses on sexuality and relationships illustrates the Arab man's mistrust of women. It is a concern that arises from a system of masculine ideals that maintains that men should hold the reins of authority and that this equation could be thrown off. This impression was strengthened by the Arab man's previous belief that the woman was a mystery and that any endeavor to understand her would be futile.
The traditional Arab writings that concentrate on sexual interactions highlight the Arab woman's boundless thirst and portray her as a sensual creature whose thoughts are only focused on sexual matters. If he doesn't succeed in fulfilling her sexual desires, the man won't be able to fulfill his own desires for her. Thus, the man's dread of the woman stems from his conviction that she possesses greater sexual talents from birth. Over time, the masterminds of that patriarchal society turned this superiority into a source of fun and derision, to the point where they reduced women to the status of sexual objects for the gratification of men and asserted that a woman's religion and intellect resided in her vulva. Is it true? What a cowardly creature! It appears that the terrified and misfortunate being that is drawing nearer each time the power mask on its face drops is not the Arab Muslim woman who, after 1400 years of suffering, has transformed into a singular diamond.
Any kind of relationship that is not marriage is forbidden in Islam. The Quran has at least 27 verses that discuss adultery. Allah says in Al-Nur verse, "The fornicator shall marry none but a fornicatress or an idolatress, and the fornicatress none shall marry her but a fornicator or an idolater." That is forbidden to the believers. Therefore, Islam, first and foremost, refuses the idea of a woman's impurity and does not attribute the idea of purity and impurity to the difference between the two sexes. The call to prohibit adultery in Islam and consider it a vice or a great sin was renewed depending on the verse that says, "Do not draw near to fornication, for it is an indecency, and its way is evil." Allah has equated adultery with polytheism and innocent murder and has given a heavy punishment for it. Allah says, "You shall lash the fornicatress and the fornicator each with 100 lashes." In the religion of Allah, let no tenderness for them seize you if you believe in Allah and the last day, and let their punishment be witnessed by a party of believers. This punishment is for unmarried Muslim men and women. The Messenger confirms that there is no infallible human being. He said, "It is not permissible to shed the blood of a Muslim except in one of three cases: adultery, a life for a life, and the one who abandons his religion and separates from the community." Regarding homosexuality, Islam considers it a kind of sexual deviation for both men and women. The ugliness of this issue in Islam is so great that the Prophet of Islam says, "Whoever you find committing the act of the people of Lot, kill the one doing it and the one to whom it is done. If a man comes upon a man, then they are both adulterers. Destroy those who do the actions of the people of Lot, and the one to whom it is done. The men coming to one another, and the women coming to one another. Lesbianism by women is adultery between them."
As you can see, the Islamic sacred text takes a strong and unequivocal stand against extramarital affairs. However, it should be noted that this rigid viewpoint extends well beyond religion and has its roots in Arab culture as well. As a result, homosexuality and extramarital affairs are taboo among Arabs who identify as Christian or Jewish, even in non-religious households. The Arab sexual landscape is still a fascinating tapestry woven with strands of love, history, and culture within a mosaic of desires and customs. A new dawn that honors the richness and vibrancy of Arab sexual life arises as the sun sets on the myths that once surrounded this private space. As the Arab world continues to redefine pleasure and forge a path toward a future where every whisper of desire is met with understanding, acceptance, and the embrace of a society that thrives on the colorful spectrum of human connection, it is doing so in a delicate dance between tradition and modernity, love and liberation. Thus, let's wave goodbye to the ignorance of the past and welcome a new era in which the story of Arab sexuality, a story of passion, love, and the eternal quest for happiness, is not only heard but also cherished.